first severe human case of bird flu in the U.S. Mutations that could make it easier for this virus to spread from person to person.
The CDC says the bird flu has mutated as a 65-year-old patient in Louisiana is suffering the nation's first severe infection.
Russia's Ministry of Defense has released a statement revealing the murky activities of the United States military. The ministry says that Washington's Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy searches for virus mutations to then use them to further its own interests.
As in 2019, the United States began preparing for a new pandemic by searching for virus mutations.
Could make COVID look like a little pandemic, which was quite alarming. I mean, is that really the case?
Yes, Brian, I really do think it's very likely that we will at some time, it's not a question of if, it's more of a question of when, we will have a bird flu pandemic. As you mentioned, unfortunately, bird flu has, when it does enter humans, has a significant mortality, probably somewhere between 25 and 50% mortality. So it's going to be quite complicated. Once the virus gains the ability to attach to the human receptor and then go human to human, that's when you're going to have the pandemic. And as I said, I think it's just a matter of time.
The virus may mutate and become more easily transmitted person to person. So the more this virus circulates and specifically co-circulates with human strains, that's going to increase the odds of the virus evolving to more human-to-human transmission. And that of course, could signal another pandemic.
Joining us now is Dr. Deborah Birx. You may remember her as the response coordinator for the White House Coronavirus Task Force in the first Trump administration. We are very fortunate to have your expertise as we try to figure out what's going on with the bird flu and what it could mean. So far, 65 human cases of bird flu have been reported in the U.S. this year, all contracted by animals. But now we have this new mutation in Louisiana. How worried should we be about bird flu potentially becoming another pandemic?
Well, I love the way you said 63 cases, because I have no idea how many cases there were or are, because our number one principle in preventing pandemics is detect. And if you go to the CDC website, you can see that they're monitoring more than 10,000 exposures, but they've only tested 530. What does that mean? That means we're not testing enough. And we know from other viruses that a lot of the spread can be asymptomatic. So we're kind of have our head in the sand about how widespread this is from the zoonotic standpoint, from the animal to human standpoint. Now, also remember, most of those cases described to date happened in the spring and the summer, not when we had H1N1 circulating right now, when we're running the flu pandemic with throughout the United States. So we have rising flu cases, and now we have still zoonotic events coming. So now you've set up for potentially a farm worker getting H5N1, also getting the current flu strain, and reassorting in that individual. To me, that's almost a bigger threat to these mutations happening in individuals over time.
When you say reassorting in that person, what does that mean?
Okay, so the H5 virus, which doesn't adapt too well to our upper respiratory tract and is preventing us from getting infected, but can infect cows and pigs and cats and dogs. So our flu, which has the binding sites for us, for our nasal passages. Viruses are very specific, and so they're very animal or human specific. Now we have human flu circulating. At the same time, we have this zoonotic flu circulating.
We do not exclude the use by the United States of these so-called defensive technologies for offensive purposes, as well as for the purpose of global management by creating crisis situations of a biological nature.
According to the ministry, Washington has been amassing various pathogens from its direct involvement with various biolabs around the world, which they say are for research and preventative measures. But Russia's defense ministry is not buying that. And they point out that whenever the Pentagon, for example, is interested in any pathogens, be it or avian influenza or the African swine flu, they later somehow end up becoming pandemic. And who stands to benefit from this? As we've seen time and time again, it's American pharmaceutical companies. And they point out, their findings point out that, for example, that there is a possible collusion between Big Pharma and USAID via an intermediary company called EcoHealth Alliance. Now, they have been studying the diversity of bat population since 2015. And they've also been looking at mechanisms how to transfer strains from bats to humans. And we know that just 2 months before the world ever heard about COVID, there was an exercise conducted at the Johns Hopkins University in New York, where in that exercise entailed scientists transferring an unknown at the time strain of from bats to humans via a pig. So, of course, all this and the office that is now being opened leads them to question why this is happening. And of course, they also point out that the U.S. government, for example, in May this year said that there's no longer a public health emergency when it comes to Joe Biden himself. Last September said that the pandemic is over. Yet this July, they are opening this Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy, which is led by a man who is a military combat surgeon and retired Air Force Major General. Why? In addition to this, documents that have been uncovered during Russia's special military operation in Ukraine point to the fact that there is a center called the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases actually plays a crucial role in all this. And they're the ones who are collecting all these dangerous pathogens from around the world in these biolabs, including one in Ukraine.
The U.S. Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases has been involved in U.S. biological programs in Ukraine. Thus, representatives of the institute actively led projects codenamed UP1 and UP8. As part of these projects, the possibility of using arthropods to spread Rickettsia, tick-borne encephalitis virus, as well as causative agents of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever and auto-hunter viruses was studied.
That's why Russia's defense ministry believes that Washington is preparing to establish biological control, sort of using defensive technologies for offensive purposes to create biological crisis conditions and situations. And also there's added concern about the people involved in all this. For example, Dr. Anthony Fauci, America's leading doctor, who was the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He has reportedly made a lot of money from this pandemic. And he's also the one who was adamant that when it comes to it came about naturally.
We have labs in Ukraine because we're developing bioweapons. So they transferred the authority for biosecurity to one agency in the HHS called the National Institute for Infectious and Allergic Diseases, run by Anthony Fauci. So Anthony Fauci got all the responsibility for bioweapons development. He got at that time a 68% raise from the Pentagon. 300 scientists wrote President Obama and said, you've got to shut down Anthony Fauci because he's going to create a microbe that will cause a global pandemic. And so Obama signed a moratorium that shut down the 18 worst of Anthony Fauci's experiments. And instead of obeying that law, Anthony Fauci shifted a lot of his operations offshore. And those operations ended up, most of them in the lab, which is a military lab, and that the Chinese run, the People's Liberation Army. And then a lot of them went to the Ukrainians.
There will be those, of course, who will say that these are just all theories or Russian propaganda, but we are talking about specific examples, specific organizations. And let's not forget that Washington has itself admitted that it does have biolabs, including in Ukraine. And again, let's not forget just how terrified they were at one point in case their research there falls into the wrong hands and how catastrophic that may be if it falls into Russian hands. So what that research there was all about, perhaps this is what we're talking about.
Dr. Wen, is bird flu in humans super dangerous?
Well, the World Health Organization estimates that in prior outbreaks of the bird flu, that the mortality rate is 52%. 52%. However, in this most recent outbreak, it seems that most cases have been mild, and maybe some people even have asymptomatic infection.
And it's not there, but California worries me because of all the spread in cattle in California. That's absolutely unprecedented, and that's why we have a level of alert here, and we need to be vigilant.
Concerning news from the CDC. The agency says H5N1 bird flu samples collected from a severely ill patient in Louisiana showed signs of mutation, differing from the samples collected from backyard flock believed to have infected the man.
We can actually show our viewers some of these numbers here. Now, confirmed total reported human cases in the United States, you can see it across the dairy herds, poultry farms, and then one other animal. Not a huge number there, but obviously troubling. What do you make of it?
Let's start with that mutation. How does that work, and is there cause for concern tonight?
Well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
And what we know from this case in Louisiana is that this patient, when they sequenced the virus, they noted that there were mutations that could potentially make this virus more susceptible to human transmission, so easily transmitted from person to person. Now, that said, there's some really important news here, and that is they sequenced the virus that was found in the backyard flock of birds and the virus from this person, and those birds did not have a mutation that showed any kind of adaptation to humans. So really this happened in that person. And we think that's really important because it means that what's circulating in the birds is actually not something that's transmissible from person to person at this point. So that's really the important piece of news here. Now, that said, there was some data that suggests that this strain is only a few mutations away from becoming transmissible. So good to keep our eye on it.
Let me sort this out for you, Griffin. I've talked to top officials at CDC over the past week about this. There's two different types of bird flu out there. The one in the dairy cattle that you're seeing, 866 herds already, 660 in California. That's the type called B313. Fancy name, but what it means is when it actually infects humans, it's mild. The symptoms have been mild across the board in that particular subtype. Now, we have to monitor that because it's spreading a lot among the dairy cattle, and it's spreading through milk machines, through milking, and occasionally it gets to a farm worker. We have to figure out a way to control that. The second type is in the poultry, which we've seen for 2 decades now. And occasionally we've seen a mutation, D1.1 it's called, where you get a very severe illness, much more severe than you get with the dairy cattle, generally in the type in birds. But now they're seeing something where in the last 2 patients, one in British Columbia, one in Louisiana, where it actually got into upper airways fairly easily. That's what we are concerned about. But the good news is they know where the 2 got it from. The one in Louisiana got it from a backyard bird, and there's no sign of any spread whatsoever.
The infected person was hospitalized after coming in contact with sick and dead birds on their property, though the CDC says the mutations were not found in those animals. Since March, more than 60 milder cases have also been identified in the U.S. Nearly all infected worked on dairy or poultry farms. This month, California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency over the virus.
Hi, Griff. The CDC says a genetic analysis indicated that a mutation of the virus was discovered inside a Louisiana patient. This person contracted the first severe case of H5N1 in the nation. The patient is one of the 66 confirmed bird flu cases in humans in 10 states across the U.S., including California, Michigan, and Texas. There was no evidence that the Louisiana patient passed the illness to anyone else. Health experts say the genetic analysis from the Louisiana patient indicates the virus evolved in a way that can make it more transmissible to humans because it more easily binds to the cell receptors in the upper respiratory tract. Nearly all of the 66 confirmed human cases involve people who were infected after working on dairy or poultry farms. California has had at least 650 dairy farms with cows infected with the bird flu, more than any other state.
I'm much more concerned about California than anywhere. California worries me because of all the spread in cattle in California. That's absolutely unprecedented, and that's why we have a level of alert here, and we need to be vigilant.
Breaking news, a horrific situation unfolding in New Orleans. 10 people are dozens more hurt when police say a man intentionally drove a pickup truck into a crowd on New Year's.
This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found.
John and Rachel, we know the driver of that vehicle who was armed is the mayor of New Orleans is calling this an act of terrorism. At least 10 people are dead and 35 injured.
There's a lot of information going around. Some of it is actually true. Some of it isn't. The federal government is now in charge of this investigation. By that, I mean the White House, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. Here's what I want to ask from the federal government. Catch these people. Catch these people. And then tell the American people the truth. Now, I don't want you to tell us yet anything that's going to interfere with your investigation. And there's things that I've been told that I think are true that I'm not sharing with you today because it could interfere with their investigation. But after we get to the bottom of this, I need to tell the American people the truth.
Rachel Wolf from the Wall Street Journal, you said you were confident there are multiple suspects involved. What makes you confident in that? Is there other?
Why would we tell you that?
The 72,000 Americans last year who died from poisoning. That's more than the entirety of Vietnam, the entire Vietnam War.
Migrant children pouring into our area on flights chartered by the feds. Former Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino says that's what you're seeing on this video from a distance at Westchester County Airport. And he says the number of flights is increasing.
We have no answers about basic questions like who's coming here, where are they being settled or taken to.
The News4 Jax I-team is digging into claims that the federal government is flying illegal immigrants into Jacksonville in the dark of night as the Biden administration tries to handle the flood of people crossing into the U.S. along the southern border.
But I see the arrogance.
As far as the border, we're taking unprecedented action. We had to fix something that was broken, especially by the last administration. We've secured record levels. This is what we have been able to do, of funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
You know, doing it for the sake of a headline, what we're seeing with these governors is irresponsible and it's inhumane. It's inhumane.
And the evil.
Biden and the Democrats, you tell me, look at their faces. You tell me which one of these 20%, 20 to 40% of these children are going to go missing.
And the corruption.
Well, think about this, okay? People came into this country illegally, violating our laws, okay? And the first thing they do is get lawyers and use our laws to sue an elected governor, to sue a state.
And the chutzpah.
We have a shortage of workers in our country. And you see, even in Florida, some of the farmers and the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down here.
And there's really not even words to describe it. The Democratic Party, working for the UN and the globalists, does a worldwide lockdown, opens the borders, floods us with tens of millions of people.
That is until stories like this bubble to the surface as a New Mexico man was indicted for allegedly trying to provide material support to a designated foreign terrorist organization.
45-year-old Herman Wilson has been trying to help militant Islamist group ISIS since at least 2020. Federal documents filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office say the Albuquerque man wanted to go to Egypt to support the terrorist organization, even using the online platform Telegram to recruit others. A confidential informant recruited through Telegram told investigators Wilson was training them how to fight on behalf of the terrorist organization and drove them to Kirtland Air Force Base to show them how, quote, easy it was to get through security.
Contrary to the fantasies of Saul Alinsky's egotistical neophytes jabbering away on the idiot box, the threat is very real.
Shamsuddin Jabbar, the 42-year-old Texas national named by the FBI as the suspect in this case, a man who has been in a firefight with police in New Orleans as gunfire unfolded.
We begin at noon with that breaking news. The start of 2025 marred by tragedy in one of America's most celebratory cities.
Yeah, that's right. Tashani and Dan, in 2024, as you mentioned, quite literally left with a bang in the form of those late night thunderstorms.
Obviously, this had to be horrific to witness. I mean, I imagine that you were there celebrating, with your friends, your loved ones, ringing in the new year, and then to see and to watch all of this unfold. What was going through your mind, Jimmy?
Shock. Like it looked like something out of a movie.
We're also following breaking news out of Las Vegas, where police and fire officials are now investigating a fire and explosion at Trump Las Vegas. They say it happened in a car that a driver pulled into a valet area there, and the vehicle exploded. Our Justice reporter Alex Mellon has the latest on that. Alex, what are they now saying about what happened here in Vegas?
Hi there, Diane. It's actually Alex Stone here. And Las Vegas law enforcement, they briefed a moment ago saying that they don't have a lot of answers yet on what this was. It was around 8:40 this morning. This call came in of an explosion at the Trump Tower Hotel. They know a cyber truck pulled up right to the glass entrance doors. Smoke started coming from the vehicle, and then it exploded. Now, they don't know if this was intentional. They don't know if it was something wrong with the vehicle.
So we continue to cover a vehicle ramming attack that has occurred on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. We just got a statement from President-elect Trump on the New Orleans attack. He says, quote, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. The crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil."
Nicole, thank you for waking up for us on this New Year's Day. You are seeing the news unfold, and we are trying to parse and make sense of the unbelievably conflicting messages coming from the mayor, calling it an attack, and then the now FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Aletha Duncan, immediately saying it was not.
Griff, first of all, thank you for having me join. What a horrible tragedy. I mean, I literally were waking up with hope for 2025. I was literally out running, and I got a text message from Fox asking if I could join. And here we are, again, discussing another tragedy in our country.
I think we were the only ones outside on the balcony, and we took video just for the sheer shock. Like, you don't see stuff like that on city streets. And just no one was helping them. Like, that was kind of the first crazy thought we had, is why is no one helping them? They wouldn't let us out. And obviously, like I told you, some were very clearly deceased, but others were yelling out. And it's a lot to process.
Yeah. And I can hear that shock in your voice.
So many questions now, including part of what Jimmy told me earlier also was that the normal steel, he called them barricades, that are normally up during an event like this, he says weren't up. Another eyewitness who was there told me the same thing. He used the word bollards, but said that the bollards that are normally up were not, that he didn't see any kind of barricade there.
The profile of the man who carried out this attack at this time. So chilling. It does appear that this person took some time to prepare for this, prepared the vehicle. It looks like there was a flag. Investigators are saying they're investigating whether it's a flag or possibly another group, foreign group's flag.
Did this vehicle belong to the suspect?
It seems the vehicle was obtained through like a ride share app program in Texas. So it was like a rented vehicle. So that's what we know at this time, not necessarily belonging to Din Jabbar, but that the vehicle was rented in Texas and then driven to New Orleans to carry out this attack. He was wearing tactical gear.
But I just would like you to know and for viewers to know that sadly and tragically, this does appear that this wasn't just like one of the officers mentioned. This is not just someone who was drunk and drove their car into a crowd. This does appear to be quite intentional, probably very well planned out, probably didn't just come up with this idea today, probably planned this out several days in advance, maybe more.
Yeah.
This is a hot spot. This is where people celebrate. And we know that those that commit acts, their goal is to create total chaos, havoc, fear, death, and destruction. And there are people that want to see us be hurt. This was a very planned out, well orchestrated event. And it's very awful. And I just, it's just stunning to me that here we are, New Year's Day, but it's not actually that stunning because in the FBI and in law enforcement, we all know that the large events, they target large events. Because there are a lot of people and they want to hurt as many people as possible. So again, it's not totally shocking, but that's where we're at.
And not even thunderstorms could put a damper on celebrations last night as the ball dropped to lead us into the new year.
That's right. An estimated 1 million people gathered in Times Square to say goodbye to 2024 and hello to 2025. Let's get right to Good Day's Robert Moses. He is live in Times Square. Robert, 1 million in Times Square, but more than 1 billion actually tuned in worldwide to see that ball drop.
Yeah, that's right. Tashani and Dan, in 2024, as you mentioned, quite literally left with a bang in the form of those late night thunderstorms. But they did not deter the million or so umbrella-less people gathered here in Times Square. This is how it looked and sounded as we rang in a new year. The kissing commenced and the confetti fell. An estimated 3,000 pounds of it rained down on the crowd. Almost as soon as it hit the ground, Department of Sanitation workers, aka New York's strongest, flexed their muscles to clean it up. And it was wet confetti, so it had to be scraped off the ground. Those who waited for hours to witness all of this told us the energy here in New York City simply cannot be matched.
I love the crowd, I love the energy, the positive vibes, and I just love New York itself.
Everyone said that I shouldn't come, but I don't care. I've never done it, so I really want to.
I love New York. I love the environment, the city, the people. I mean, the excitement. It's all worth it.
So we've still seen some people milling about here in Times Square, taking some last pictures and perhaps stumbling home to get some rest after a long night. Coming up later on this morning, we'll speak to the Department of Sanitation about this cleanup effort here, and indeed it is still underway here. The street sweepers, you can probably hear behind me, have been going up and down the streets and the avenues, scraping off the leftover confetti. But all in all, it looks pretty good considering that 1.5 tons of it fell just a few hours ago. We're live in Times Square this morning. Dan and Tashani, back to you.
And by the time that sun comes up, it'll look like nothing ever happened.
What I know about this YouTube channel would be banned. And I would say 90+% of everything out there on this subject has been curated and embedded within pop culture by the CIA and others who are very, very good at what's called a PSYOP, part of a long-term PSYOP. Abductions are human-made events, part of a PSYOP. Mutilations of cattle, all human. This drone imbroglio, all human. And there are a number of events that really do look like an ET craft. But what people forget is that 70 years of reverse engineering extraterrestrial vehicles and 8 to $10 trillion in black budget funding over the years, studying it. They've come out with devices and machines that are almost indistinguishable from an actual extraterrestrial one. So those can also be, you look at these drones, you'll also see some of these weird, like almost living orbs and spheres that appear.
Yes.
Those are ours. Now, there's extraterrestrial phenomenon that may look that way too, but what they're doing is a copycat. And therefore they can deceive the public. Even very well-informed people on the subject can be deceived, because the other thing that people wildly underestimate is the degree to which we have unpacked and figured out extremely advanced technologies and then put them into weapon systems or deceptive operations.
Several viewers have reached out to KRDO 13 Investigates following the recent headlines of drone sightings along the East Coast to share their own video clips of similar sightings. We reached out to several agencies in Colorado to see if those mysterious drones are now moving west.
Unexplained drones leave millions on edge across the country. One former defense official recently issued this warning about the government's secrecy around UFOs.
Excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we as Americans have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth, and I also believe the world deserves the truth.
Nearly every agency I reached out to said they haven't seen an increase in drone sightings, or they couldn't comment immediately. But still, KRDO 13 Investigates has had several viewers share with us video of what they claim to be mysterious drones flying in the night sky.
Look, one of the drones here in Colorado.
This video was sent in from a Pueblo man just last week who claims this is a drone, and this was a UAP from earlier this fall.
I was kind of excited, to be honest. I wasn't like afraid of it by any means. I was like, ooh, this is exciting. Like, they're not just in New Jersey. They seem to be, in other states.
Here's another sent in by a couple driving back to Pueblo. They say this flying object, sporting festive Christmas-colored lights, was found near Fountain on I-25 in the same spot both on Friday and Sunday night.
There's that little bit down inside of me that's real excited and hopes it's aliens.
But this isn't part of a bigger trend. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office says they've seen 0 credible reports in the last few months. Colorado Springs Police also say they have no reports, and Pueblo Police Department is still looking through their records. Now, even all the way down in Alamosa, which historically is a hotbed for aerial activity, police say they haven't had any sightings or reports recently. But what happens if you do look up into the night sky and see a drone? Well, if you suspect it's being used for criminal activity or threatening your safety, then you're encouraged to call local law enforcement. Now, any sightings of drones or other aircraft that may not be following federal guidelines should be reported to the FAA. Now, the Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management tells us there are several free apps that you can use to identify objects flying in the sky above you. Reporting live in Colorado Springs, Michael Lagerweld, KRDO 13.
Former Special Operations Intel analyst and drone expert Brett Velkovitz joins us now. Brett, thank you for your service. Thanks for joining us. We listen to that, and he's talking about extraterrestrial, but we really don't have to go outside of our stratosphere to see our government being very secretive and not very trustworthy. I'm looking at the timeline here on these drones, and you have Mayorkas at DHS briefing and saying no big deal. You have Admiral Kirby saying it. These are people who lied to our faces about the border and about the Chinese spy balloon. If that's the credibility and you're saying there's nothing to worry about here, that makes me think there's something to worry about here.
Yeah, that's the issue, is they've destroyed the credibility with the American people. And look, I want to believe there's some other form of life out there just like the rest of us. And I do have a real curiosity about what's up on our stars, but I'm also pragmatic about it and realistic. And to say there's some alleged secret government group that for decades has been covering up evidence of aliens and hiding UFOs in their possession seems a little far-fetched to me. Frankly, I don't think the current government is smart enough to do that. But, and then these sources are always some whistleblowers allegedly too afraid to come forward what would be the incentive of that? And also, why does no one ever seem to be able to show me clear photos of these UFOs? And that was one of the issues with these recent drone sightings is the more people across the country who send me photos of these drones, the more I started to understand many things in the sky are being misidentified. People are finally starting to look up. They're wondering what's up there now, and they're seeing a lot of things that they don't recognize. And it's not their fault. The problem is our government hasn't done a good job protecting us from modern day threats by explaining what is regularly above us and what threats we're going to face at home sooner than later. And Joey, the rapid innovation right now of lethal drone technology over the years due to ongoing wars overseas has forever changed the ways wars are going to be fought. In Ukraine, for instance, an estimated 70 to 80% of the daily attacks that take place on the front lines are conducted with drones. You've got even North Korean soldiers who have entered the fight recently being taken out left and right by these kamikaze handheld drones. And frankly, we're not ready for this. Our military is not prepared for that style of fight. We've put too much money in the wrong thing, and there's just a lot of arrogance on our current government administration that thinks they've got it all figured out. But we're never going to fight another war without drones, and our adversaries, they surely get it. I mean, there was a Chinese defense contractor who just signed an agreement for over 1 million handheld kamikaze drones to be produced for the Chinese government before 2026. That scale of production doesn't exist in the U.S. They get it, but our government's not prioritizing it.
Yeah, I've done a lot of coverage here, different shows on Fox about drones because I have friends in that industry coming from the EOD world, and it is the absolute arms race of the future. You talk about us spending money. We spend all this money on the F-35, and you can do that with a Walmart drone now. You can implement something that easy. But when we take a step back and look at what's happening, we're kind of honed in on New Jersey, but the lead up to this, I think, created a lot of the hysteria. You had, I think the first thing reported on were drones going near military bases overseas. Then you have a Chinese citizen being caught trying to get back to China after flying a drone near a military base. Then you start to have this happening in the Northeast. And I guess my question to you is, my kind of take on this is a lot of it is coming from people actually finally looking up and paying attention. But is there, within all of this, a layer of there is something specific going on that we need answers on?
We definitely need answers. And look, the recent drone sightings just frankly showed how vulnerable we are as a nation.
And it's going to pull the curtain back specifically on the lost 100 years of these technologies. And it's going to go all the way back, more than 100 years, to the Stubblefield Earth Battery. And Nikola Tesla standing there with his old farmer, where he's running his whole farm on this device where he has stakes in the ground that are tapping into this electromagnetic and mostly magnetic flux field and running generators running his farm. This is 1902.
This is 1902.
1902. And Nikola Tesla standing there. I got the picture. This document is going to blow. It goes from that all the way to the Lockheed Skunk Works devices that started being built in the 50s. We have witnesses and transcripts of the Norton Air Force Base show, California. Norton's closed now. That they had an air show in 1988 where there were 3 of these man-made UFOs, ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, hovering in this hangar. And those, we have those fully illustrated. We have enough detail. We actually have the schematics of the interior.
You have the schematics of the interior?
And the exterior, how they look. And these were built, interestingly, the witness who was there was an aerospace designer who saw that the components in it, this is 1988, were from the late Mercury era. So the Mercury capsule, which was late 50s, early 60s. And they had markings and charts on them where they'd been out in space around our solar system. They were specifically told these had gone through the solar system. Now, those were from the late 50s, early 60s. No jet fuel, no rockets. So this is going to be shocking. It's going to be shocking. Well, we're going to actually have a lot of the devices going through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that weren't the flying devices. But I'll give you an example. There was an inventor named Floyd Sweet, and he had a solid state device, looked like a little bigger than a cigarette pack, that you could attach to an electric motor, say for a car. It wasn't plugged in. Once it got going, it was a 0 point of quantum vacuum flux, and it would run a 300 horsepower motor. So imagine having a 300 horsepower motor in your Tesla or your truck, and this little there are no batteries. You don't have 900 pounds of lithium-ion batteries, and the lithium-ion batteries really are destroying the environment. And you never have to plug it in. About the time he was going to get, he was meeting with some people at GM who thought they were interested, but they were actually just trying to find out what he had. After that meeting, he died suddenly, suspiciously. How people claiming, well, he dropped dead of a heart attack. And that was plausible because he was an elderly guy. But before that, he had had an assassination attempt. He was going up some steps, and a sniper was trying to shoot it, but he didn't know it. He tripped just as the bullet went right past his head. And we have the testimony of a lieutenant colonel who was involved in this case, who is a physicist also. This is going to be shocking to people.
Oh yeah,
it's utterly shocking.
You know, these mysterious deaths. Some people are like, oh, you know, that no way. Well, it does. We talked about the Epstein stuff. Let's talk. You know, the guy that invented the hydrocar, gone.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there have been so many. I've worked with people.
And then there was
who've done that.
If you could refresh my memory, but wasn't there somebody else that disappeared and they just happened to be involved?
Yeah, there have been a number of folks where things get set up like that around them. There was a guy doing this recent in New York where there was a man who had recreated this water fuel cell where your car could run off water. Yeah, and just bizarre stuff. So one of the problems with all these inventors,
I mean, it's not a consequence. It's not a coincidence.
No, these are hits. But the problem is that if you're a brilliant electromagnetic engineer, but you don't know the bear you're about to poke with that technology and what they'll do to keep it suppressed, you're destined to fail. So one of the reasons we're doing this documentary is to provide the context so that people who do have these devices come to us, and we have a strategy that we briefly outline in this documentary of how to fix this problem. Well, how do you fix it? The big mistake people make, they try to patent it. And we have actually a national security order denial on a patent of one of these devices from an inventor I know. So we're going to prove this is not a conspiracy theory. Here it is from the patent office. So they ain't going to allow it. It gets confiscated. We have a patent examiner who's a PhD physicist testifying that they confiscate these things. That's in the movie. Then we say, okay, how are you going to get it out then? If you try to keep how it operates secret, then you're very vulnerable. So one of the things I did for the Disclosure Project for my own security is to decentralize everything I have. It's called detargeting. So why have a big bullseye on your ass when if you were to disperse all your information and intelligence, which I have done, it would still be out there. Moreover, you create a dead man trigger. So since the 90s, I've had a dead man trigger of stuff I'm holding back. If something happens to me, that hits the internet, and every celebrity that supports what we're doing that can reach 1 billion people, they get it, they put it out on Instagram, and boom. And this is stuff they do not want out.
Mm-hmm.
It's names, it's stuff that I have not released, and where and who. But people say, why don't you release it? I said, well, this is one of my insurance policies. Well, what these inventors don't get is that they don't do that. They have no SecOps, so they have no security protocols. They just think I have a better mousetrap, the world's going to beat a path to my door. When in reality, Murder Incorporated beats a path to their door. Okay, or it just gets confiscated. Most of the time, it's not even that. They're so crazy. They think we're going to keep this secret. Nobody will know how it works. And I'm going to just sort of be able to get it out there without no one proving it. And I said, no. If you're making an outrageous claim that you're pulling energy out of the space around us, it's got to be released for scientific review. It's got to be reproduced by multiple labs and people who are skilled in the art. You got to open source it. Open source means it's just out there at the first level. Now, maybe at the second level, you could patent because then the whole world knows. So what we're proposing is that at a level 1 phase of these new technologies coming out, we're going to leave the things that fly alone because those could be missile delivery systems. But the things that would run your house or car, whatever, a boat, truck, those need to come out like 100 years ago. So the way to do it, and this we outline, is that we would disclose it publicly on blockchain protected systems, massively, multiple celebrities. And the first 20 of these devices we would reproduce would be running Demi Lovato's home or Leo DiCaprio's house or Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters, or whoever, all these people interested in the subject. Why? Because the media could suppress this, but you can't suppress dozens of celebrities with 1 billion followers.
Yeah.
Got it? I mean, sort of like it's a very well thought through strategy. It's unconventional. Because my view is you put a boulder in front of where we're trying to flow, you just the water. If you're water, you just flow around it.
No, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Even if they do try to suppress it, once, because they could take the post, they could take the video. It's already been out there.
Out.
So many people have already seen it. They would have to delete the accounts before it gets out.
Well, they'd have to tear down the whole internet. So our plan would be to have a multi-nation, multi-site, blockchain-protected release of the schematics, how it works, everything about it, so anyone could reproduce it if you know how to do that. I mean, I couldn't even make a toaster oven.
How many people do you think are out there that know how to produce this kind of technology?
Oh, hundreds.
Hundreds,
maybe more. Over the years, there have been thousands of these devices that have come and gone. Most of them, people just take it to their grave because they don't understand the strategy of what they need to do. So they'll make a deal with someone financially, and that someone is fronting for another interest that suppresses it, buys it out. It's called black shelving. Happens all the time in the corporate world. You want something that's a competition, you create a corporate entity, you fund it, get controlling interest in it, and then you just put it on black shelf. I know of multiple devices that would literally save humanity and the planet that's happened to.
on, buddy.
So sick of the hobos, always begging for change. I don't like how I gotta work and they just sit around and get paid. I hate all of the people who can't drive their cars. But you better get out of the way before I start falling apart. I hate how my wife is always up my ass. She always wants to buy brand new things, but I don't have the cash. I hate my job, all of my rich friends. I hate everyone to the bitter end. Nothing turns out right, there's no end in sight. I hate my life. Come on, never get late. Nice guys always lose. How could she have another headache? There's always some kind of excuse. I still hate my job. My boss is a dick. I don't get paid nearly enough to put up with all of your shit. I hate my job, all of my rich friends. I hate everyone to the bitter end. Nothing turns out right, there's no end in sight. I hate my life. I can't tell when a girl's underage. You know I tell her she's a nice piece of ass. Then her daddy punches me in the face. So if you're pissed like me, bitches is what you gotta do. Put your middle fingers out through the air. Go on and say fuck you. I hate my job, all of my rich friends. I hate everyone to the
town. Cool dude in town. Gets baked and drinks the cold golden crown. Hell yeah, he says with his fist to the sky, he's the king of the night. Won't let life slide by. Riding how he dreams and never fade. In a midnight madness where legends are made. Hands in the air, he rolls like thunder. Chasing the stars, a true night thunder. Hell fucking yeah, James shouts loud and clear. Living life on his terms, no place for fear. With fear in his head and fire in his eyes, James Ottawa